Well, good morning, everybody. On behalf of the Deputy Convener, Councillor Kelly, members that are here in Grangemouth and members online and officials that are here and online as well, may I extend a very warm welcome to you to this meeting of Falkirk Council's Planning Committee. In accordance with Section 43 of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003, it has been directed that this meeting will be conducted in such a manner as to allow a remote attendance by elected members. The meeting will also be live streamed. First part of the business is apologies. I'll go to Mr. Henderson. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Convener. We have apologies submitted by Councillors Murtagh and Cawley. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. Nothing else intimated? No. Okay, thank you for that. That takes us to declarations of interest.
Convener, I believe that Councillor Bowes may be stuck in the traffic that's currently impacting on the M9 at the moment. So I believe that he intends to be here, but he may be stuck in traffic at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Sinclair. I was held up myself with that this morning, so I can appreciate his position. Okay, then that takes to item 2 on your agenda this morning, declaration of interest. And just for clarity, I shall read this out. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interest they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Have we any declarations of interest at this time? Councillor Sinclair?
Yeah, Convener, it's not a declaration of interest, it's more of a transparency statement. Item number 5 on this morning's agenda, I live some 500 yards from the site. I believe that I don't believe that gives me a conflict in this, but I just wanted to be transparent that I live close to the site and know the site fairly well.
Thank you. I'll just get Mr. Henderson to come in on that. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I think Councillor Sinclair has intimated that there may be a connection in terms of living in fairly near proximity, but is taking the view, having regard to the Councillor's Code of Conduct and the objective test in the code, that it doesn't preclude him from taking part in the decision. So he's not formally declaring an interest in the matter. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to say that we've been, Councillor Bowes has now come in. He's got out of the traffic jam and we're really delighted to see him. Thank you, Councillor Bowes. That takes us to item 4 on your agenda, which is...
Sorry, I take it as declaration of interest you were doing. One of the parking bay ones. I know of this case. It's more a declaration. I don't think I've got a conflict, but I've been speaking to the objector and told him the procedure so that he could deal with things. I just thought I would make as a declaration. I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but I just thought I would make you aware of that.
What item was that?
So I think it's number 8, which is... Yeah, it's number 8.
Number 8. Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. I think similarly, Sinclair, there's an intimation that for transparency purposes, it's worthwhile noting that there was some procedural information given to an objector, but Councillor Bowes is intimating that having regard to the objective test in the code, that he doesn't consider he requires to recuse himself. And in terms of members of the committee, it is available to members of the committee to signpost parties to officers and procedural information. Thank you, Convener.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Henderson. That takes us to item 4 on your agenda this morning. Construction of dwelling house at land to the southeast of 39. Before that, there will be the minute of the meeting of the Planning Committee held on the 15th of May 2024. It's pages 3 to 12 on your agenda. Any questions arising from that minute? Nothing? Thank you for that. Agreed. Thank you. That takes us to item 4 now, and apologies for that slip there. Item 4, construction of dwelling house at land to the southeast of 39 Latsdale Drive, head of Muir for Mr. B. Cuthell. It's pages 13 to 35 on your agenda. Now, just to give you some information before we bring in for the report from our officer, that this was called in by Councillor McCabe. It was a subject of a site visit. And unfortunately, Councillor McCabe is unable, because of circumstances, to be with us here this morning. So I'm going to take you on to Mr. Henderson again in relation to this situation. Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. As you've said, Councillor McCabe called the application in for consideration by the Planning Committee. He also made a deputation request, as noted on the agenda of the previous meeting and this meeting. So he has requested to be given leave to speak to and address the committee on the application, as any other party can do. As I understand the position, Councillor McCabe has rather unexpectedly not been able to attend the meeting today for, I think, reasons of transportation that are out of his control, and has asked the committee if it might want to consider continuation of the matter until the August committee to allow an opportunity for him to speak. I think on that procedural point, what I would advise the committee is that it is, as you all know, for the committee to decide whether or not to hear a deputation when a matter comes before you requesting a deputation, and indeed there's no obligation on the committee to continue consideration because a deputy is unable to attend a meeting. With that said, I'm entirely in the committee's hands. The request has been made, and I think it's for the committee to consider whether or not it would be agreeable to continuing the application to a future meeting in order to allow Councillor McCabe the opportunity to have his deputation request considered and, if agreed, to speak before the committee. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you again, Mr. Henderson. Well, you've heard Mr. Henderson. How do members feel? Do they feel that there's a justification for a continuation in relation to the fact that it was Councillor McCabe called us in, and unfortunately, due to circumstances, not been here with us? Councillor Bowes, have you got your light on, sir?
Yeah, I have, Convener. I appreciate circumstances, and unfortunately, sometimes that becomes a wee problem we've all got. However, it's already been called. It's been called in. It was obviously been in the notifications, which caused a delay on it. If we don't go forward today, it'd be September, I would guess, before we're able to come back, because there won't be another meeting now until
August.
Late August. I think we have to proceed with this because other than that, we're holding up the planning process. So I think we have to proceed with it.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, Bailey Kerr, sorry.
No, the same as Councillor Bowes, Convener. However, I say it at every meeting, this is people's lives we're dealing with here. And whether it's objectors or applicants, it's their lives. And the stress that this causes people, whether you're objecting or whether you're the applicant, must be horrendous. So I'm just commenting that it's people's lives, and I'll take on board what anybody else say the committee has to say. Convener.
Councillor Forrest, and then Councillor Nimmo.
Thank you, Convener. I just like to add my thoughts to what my few colleagues have also said. It is someone's lives. This went on for quite a while. It was delayed so that we could have a site visit. We went out, we've done the site visit, and really, this must be a stressful time for the applicant. I'd like to get it over and done with as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. This committee in the past and hopefully in the future would agree to hear deputations. Now, obviously, there's extenuating circumstances why Councillor McCabe can't attend this morning, and I think it's important that we do hear from him. in these circumstances, I would move that we continue this to allow Councillor McCabe to come in front of us and say what he's got to say. I think it's important.
Thank you for that, Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Kelly.
I would second that motion Councillor Allen's made.
See a light on down the bottom there? Provost.
I mean, the deputation request, I mean, whatever's going to be said might have an effect on our decision. So I think I would personally like to hear it. Has he submitted a written statement that we could read?
Mr. Henderson.
Thank you. I'm not aware of a formal written statement, but I think looking at the agenda papers, there is a note at paragraph 2.1, which relates to the calling in reason made by Councillor McCabe, which was to allow the committee to agree on the acceptability of the proposed site for planning permission in principle for a single-storey dwelling house.
Back to you, Provost.
Okay, I personally would like it to continue.
Continue. Anybody like to come into the debate at this stage? We've got a motion that's not been seconded by, it's been moved by Councillor Nimmo and seconded by Councillor Kelly for a continuation. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Councillor Bowes.
Yeah, sorry, Provost. I think we should continue. I think we need to go through this and come up with a decision today, whichever way that decision goes. I think we need to do it today. It's already been delayed significantly, and to delay it again for another 3 months, I think is unjustified.
So you're formally moving an amendment to carry on?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Have we got a seconder?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councillor Forrest. Just to clarify where we are, we've got a motion moved and seconded for a continuation. We've now got an amendment moved and seconded to carry on with today's business. Anybody else like to come into the debate at this stage?
Councillor Flynn.
Councillor Flynn.
Hang on a minute. Sorry, convener. It was just I've listened to all the people that have commented. There was a bit of confusion there because one person says to continue the matter, and then Councillor Bowes said, let's continue. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, is this the same? We're talking about two different continuations, but I'm clear in my mind what Councillor Bowes was thinking is to continue today. But I just would like to stress we need to avoid these sort of confusions with the use of certain words during the meeting, just in case it creates. Otherwise, we seem to be talking about the same thing. But I would think we should just continue it until the next meeting. I mean, if it's August, well, we're mid-June already almost. It's a couple of months. It's not the end of the world to wait 2 months, but that's just my opinion. Thanks, convener.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'll go to Mr. Henderson just to reiterate this. Thank you.
Thank you, convener. And I think just to clarify the motion and amendment, we have a motion by Councillor Nimmo, seconded by Councillor Kelly, to continue consideration of the application to the next meeting of the Planning Committee. And we have an amendment by Councillor Bowes, seconded by Councillor Forrest, not to continue to the next committee, but rather to proceed with determination of the application at this meeting. So on the basis of a roll call, either motion, which is continuation to the August committee, or amendment, which would be no continuation and proceed with consideration of the item at this meeting. Provost Bissett.
Continue to the next meeting.
So that is the motion. Thank you, Provost. Councillor Bowes.
Amendment.
Bailey Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Colley is absent. Councillor Flynn.
Motion.
Councillor Forrest.
Amendment.
Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Bailey Kerr.
Motion.
Councillor Murtagh is absent. Councillor Nimmo.
Motion.
Councillor Redmond.
Motion.
And Councillor Sinclair.
Abstain.
We have 7 votes for the motion, 2 for the amendment and 1 abstention. And accordingly, the motion is carried, and that was to continue consideration of the matter to the next meeting of the Planning Committee. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henderson and members. That takes us to item 5 on your agenda this morning: construction of 8 platted dwellings and 1 dwelling house at land to the north of 34 Seaforth Road, Falkirk, for Ruby Developments. It's pages 36 to 59, and this was a subject of a site visit as well. We also have a deputation request. An application has been made by Caroline Surmack, the agent to be received as a deputation and heard in respect to this item of business. So the first part today, members, is are we agreeing to hear the deputation? Agreed for that. Okay, thank you very much for that. The opportunity now for our officer, Stephen McClure, to give us a report. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Convener. Okay, so as noted before, this came to the previous committee and was carried forward for a site visit, which we went out to have a look at with some members there. So the application site itself, it consists of an area of brownfield land located within an established residential area, Langrees in Falkirk. The land is currently mainly monoblocked and is surrounded by a low wall and fencing on top, albeit there is open access at several points to the site. It would appear on removal of the previous buildings that were on the site that work was carried out at some point to improve the land and the interim, hence the monoblocking and the erection of the wall around the site there. However, the site currently appears to be unused, and there was notable issues with littering in the area when I first carried out site visits there. To the north of the site, across the street, are residential properties, with the immediate east of the site is bounded by a convenience store, and to the west there is seen to be a small grass strip containing 3 mature trees there, beyond which is the road and more residential properties. To the south is a private access road which goes to the rear of the commercial unit and into a garage lock-up area. There is also further residential dwellings to the south of the private road. It's now been proposed to erect 9 dwellings on the site, which would be in the form of 8 flatted dwellings and 1 dwelling house with associated parking and landscaping. The reason it was called committee there was to allow committee the opportunity to fully consider the application in relation to the visual, residential and general amenity of the area, and to visit the site and surrounding area prior to any decision being made there. In terms of the site history, it has been seen within the report there that there was previous permission for dwellings on this site, but this was never actually taken forward. The current applicants also applied previously for 10 flatted dwellings on the site. However, this was withdrawn as they had actually submitted it as social housing. However, there was no social housing provider involved in the site, and the site was not contained within the Housing Services Strategic Housing Investment Plan there. In terms of consultations, the roads unit was consulted on the site. There is still currently a shortage of spaces on the site there by 1 space at the moment. Also, there is issues with the access to where the parking would be provided. The private road would have to actually be widened at the access point there, as it's currently too small. And also, there would also have to be a footpath provided along the south of the site, which isn't included within the current application. Scottish Water has no objection at this stage. However, they have notified us there are their own assets transiting the site there. Also, Falkirk Council's Environmental Protection Unit was consulted. The Environmental Protection Unit would require a contaminated land assessment to be submitted for this one. However, this could be conditioned if required. A noise impact assessment was submitted with the application there, and if all measures were taken on site there in regards to noise assessment, then it would be considered as acceptable in terms of noise there. Housing strategy and private sector were also consulted there. This was due to the previous proposal for the site being put forward as social housing, where there had been no discussion with any relevant parties on such. And there is still a small mention again within the supporting documents noting more social housing as needed. We again therefore consulted Housing Services in relation to this. They have noted, however, that this site isn't included within any of the upcoming proposals, and it was actually looked at by basically previous social housing companies for the site, and it was basically not considered acceptable for their use there. In terms of public representation, there was one letter received there. The objections are noted within the report there. In terms of community council, there's no active community council on the site there. In terms of detailed appraisal, the proposal was assessed against the relevant policies contained within National Planning Framework 4 and Falkirk Local Development Plan 2, which can be seen in full within the report. The proposal was also assessed against supplementary guidance SGO 5, SGO 6, SG 13 and SG 14. Again, this assessment is contained within the report there. The proposal was also considered against further material considerations, these being consideration in relation to past coal mining activities on the site and the assessment of the submitted representation there. Again, this can be seen within the report. In conclusion, it was considered that the site did not meet the criteria of all policies covering the site, and therefore it was recommended for a refusal. This was in relation to overdevelopment mainly of the site. I'll just take committee through quickly, if it's okay. If I can ask Gemma or Jim if you can share the proposed site plan. It's just to point out a few matters in relation to this site for committee there. So I'll just ask if Gemma can put that up. So is it the proposed site plan? Sorry, Gemma, is the one there, or block plan it'll be, which shows the actual development. If you keep going along there. That one there, yeah, if you just hold that. So it's just to really point out to committee for this site and to give obviously the visuals, because on this one, so there is some fundamental issues with this site in regards to the access junction. So if you see at the south of the site there, you'll see the access in there. It has like a sort of lip coming up at the bottom there. Currently that isn't to the required standards for the road units. It would actually have to be widened, but the curve you see at the bottom there is actually in relation to someone's garden there. So to actually create the widening of the junction, they would have to eat into their own site a little bit there. They would also, in relation to the parking area you see at the southern side of the section of the site here, you would actually have to create a footpath along either the north or the south of the parking to meet the standards there and allow access obviously for pedestrians into the basically lock-up area, or just for access obviously into the development there itself. And currently with the parking at the moment, it's pressed hard against the building, as you can see, or hard against the small path they've provided there as well. On the west side there's also, it's not shown in the plan here, but there is actually mature trees which haven't been considered within the application there. The root structure of those would likely go in, or do go into the site there, and that would have to be considered. There's not much of an amenity or these sort of pockets within the Langley's area, so it would be an important amenity to try and preserve there for current residents on the site and future residents if this was to go ahead there. There's also design issues with the flats themselves, and there is a dwelling included. The dwelling's the southernmost section there of the L shape that you see. There's basically with the dwelling, they haven't actually included any individual facilities for a dwelling house as you would normally need, like your own private access, bin storage, parking, etc. So we have gone back, but there's been no amendments made in relation to that there. Also in relation to waste storage, they've provided Euro bins on the site there, but as I say, with flats and houses, you would actually get your own individual bins there. So there's no consideration being taken in regards to the bin storage on this site at the moment, and that would have to be further considered. There was also further issues with the likes of the design. For example, the flats, nothing came out onto the garden area. There was no access from that. There's only the 2 access points there. So there would be a design amendments required from our point of view to the flats as well. And also there's a point just to raise, which actually isn't something immediately for us to consider. It would be for the applicant and Scottish Water, but on the southern side of the site, sort of diagonally, really where the house sort of sits on the site, there's actually Scottish Water infrastructure goes up under that. Now, normally you wouldn't build on top of Scottish Water infrastructure. It isn't for us to get into that debate with them, but it was Scottish Water have highlighted that within their consultation report for us to pass on to the applicants. And normally they would have to reroute that or redesign the network there for that, which would impact obviously on ourselves because it would then have to come onto Falkirk Council land normally, which is around the site. I should point out as well, the private access to the south there is actually, although it's private, it's not adopted in terms of the roads. It's actually maintained, as far as I could see, by one of our own services. So it previously was Housing Services that maintained that because it goes into a lock-up site there. So again, it's ensuring that the roads is future-proofed by obviously creating the correct access so that if anything did happen with the lock-up site in the future, if the council wanted to do anything with that, that obviously the road network is upgraded there to the standard it's required. But as I say, to do that, they would have to eat into the site at the moment. So it's just basically, from our point of view, there's the principles there to get some development on this site, but at the moment they can't meet all the infrastructure and requirements for the site from our point of view, and it would be overdevelopment of the site. Okay, thanks committee.
Thank you, Stephen. A very fulsome report. It's now an opportunity for the deputation to step forward. Would you like to come over here, please? Just that's perfect. I mean, you're going to speak, just press the button. Now you'll have 10 minutes between these, but first of all, could you just introduce yourselves to the committee?
Good morning, Karolina Surmacz. I'm the architect and agent for the application.
Hi.
Thank you, Convener.
Could you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jet Haney. I'm a planning and development consultant based in Falkirk.
Okay, you have 10 minutes from now.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to highlight the key benefits of this proposal and for taking the time to consider this application at committee, and particularly for taking the time to inspect the subject site. I will keep my presentation very concise, highlighting the key issues and addressing policy matters. Key issues. The proposal can be considered within the context of 4 key issues. 1, a significant housing shortage. 2, a long-standing derelict brownfield site which has a planning history of approval for residential development spanning some decades. 3, an area in need of regeneration and investment. And 4, easily accessible public transport. It is within this broad context that the details of the proposals can be considered. Stephen's paper notes that, in his opinion, the proposal does not accord with National Planning Policy Framework, policies namely Policy 6, Forest and Woodland and Trees, Policy 9, Brownfield Vacant Derelict Land and Empty Buildings, Policy 12, Zero Waste, Policy 13, Sustainable Transport, Policy 14, Design, Quality and Place, and finally Policy 16, Quality Homes. Stephen does acknowledge that the proposals do accord with National Planning Framework policies, Policy 15, Local Living and 20-minute Neighbourhoods, Policy 22, Flood Risk and Water Management, and Policy 23, Health and Safety. The matters raised within these strategic policies are repeated largely within the local development plan, and it is best that we consider them through the relevant local development policies highlighted in Stephen's paper. Stephen's paper notes that, in his opinion, the proposals do not accord with a number of the local development plan policies. I will state each policy and provide a short justification, explanation in support of the proposals. Policy PE01 placemaking. This really boils down to a question of design. What does it look like? We would suggest to members that the proposals are similar in character to many other types of modern housing provided elsewhere in Falkirk and beyond. We believe the proposals are a reasonable and appropriately designed solution for the small urban site. We believe the proposal fits comfortably within the existing urban context and certainly does not merit refusal on the design grounds. Stephen does mention vehicle and pedestrian access. We believe appropriate vehicular and pedestrian access can be achieved, although perhaps not fully meeting the technical standards suggested. The modest scale of the proposal mitigates any minor shortfall. It is also important to recognise that the existing situation, the access road presently serves an area of lockups, and there is also an existing footpath which serves the existing lockup area, which accommodates about maybe approximately 10 to 15 cars. Some outstanding technical matters are highlighted in Stephen's paper, but we believe that these can be subject to appropriate planning conditions to safeguard any issues. Policy PE 20 trees, woodland and hedgerows. It is noted that there are 3 trees which are located out with the site. The questions which require to be considered, we believe, are: 1, can a condition be imposed on a consent to safeguard the trees? It is worth noting that these trees are, in terms of the roots, we would estimate at around 2 metres away from the proposed built development. 2, are the trees more valuable than 9 new homes? That's a question to consider. And 3, if these trees are indeed lost, which we don't believe they will be, can they be replaced by additional planting elsewhere, which the applicant would be comfortable to do? We do not believe that the trees are more valuable than the 9 new housing units, and in any case, we believe a condition could be applied to any approval to safeguard the trees, should members wish to take that approach. Policy PE 27, vacant, derelict and contaminated land. This brownfield site has been vacant for many years and is presently a blight on the local area. There's rubbish, and it's also, we understand, a centre for antisocial behaviour in the evenings, which of course will have a negative impact on the general amenity enjoyed by residents nearby. We believe the proposal, should they be implemented, will have a significant beneficial impact on the amenity of the local area and the merit approval. Policy HC02, windfall housing. Again, a question of judgment and balance. We believe the proposal to be developed on a long-standing vacant brownfield site merits approval. Any minor technical shortfall, for example, providing 12 parking spaces instead of the suggested 13 parking spaces, does not merit refusal, and the benefits of development far outweigh any minor negatives highlighted in Stephen's paper. Policy HC06, infill development and plot subdivision. This policy considers matters relating to access, trees and design matters. For reasons highlighted elsewhere in my presentation, we believe the proposal presents an acceptable design solution, and where any doubt remains in members' minds, members could, if they wish, attach appropriate conditions to any consent to address these outstanding issues. Policy IR09, parking. Again, given the urban context of the site, options for on-street parking and, importantly, easy access to public transport, we believe a shortfall of 1 space does not justify a refusal of a plan application. Policy IR10, drainage. These are the points raised in Stephen's papers are essentially technical matters, and I think, as Stephen mentioned, we believe that these could be covered by an appropriate worded condition. Policy IR18, waste management and new development. As stated in Stephen's paper, these matters again could be covered by an appropriate worded condition. It is also worth noting that in Stephen's paper, the proposal also accords with a range of policies, namely PE 17, open space and new development, PE 24, flood management, IR02, developer contributions, and importantly, bearing in mind that some of the issues relate to parking and access, IR05, travel hierarchy and transport assessment, IR07, bus travel, and IR13, low and zero carbon development. In conclusion, on balance and taking all matters into consideration, we believe the proposals will make a net positive contribution to the local environment and will provide much needed housing and regeneration in a disadvantaged urban area. The proposals meet many policy requirements, and where there are gaps in information, appropriate conditions can be applied to safeguard these matters. There are no significant material considerations which merit or justify a refusal of this proposal, in our opinion. Therefore, we respectfully request members to approve this application. We are, of course, happy to take any questions. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, is your colleague got anything to say, or are you've got another 1.5 minutes?
I can try to summarize it quickly. And the site is currently derelict site, brownfield site, used for many social behaviors. In the evening, I visited the site many times over the last 2 years. We've been working on the project, and there's always smashed glass, which poses health and safety hazards. I would like to address the site plan. So we are actually proposing, there's an existing path 1,400 wide, and we are proposing 1,500 wide footpath along that site. That's enough for wheelchair turning circle, complies with that. It's a private road access used historically for parking on the site, 4.2 meters wide at the narrowest point. That is wide enough for emergency vehicles to access the site. So I would argue it's not a road access, it's mainly, rather than this being a road, it's an access to existing car park. And we've got right of access to the car park currently. The site lies within 20-minute neighborhoods. There is a lot of amenities, schools, shops, even workplaces within 20-minute walking distance. Therefore, future-proofing Falkirk Town Centre and allowing growth would support the application, in my opinion. Is that my time?
That's okay. Thank you very much. Now, we just sit there as an opportunity now for members to ask any questions. I'll come in right away. In relation to our officer had stated in his report that there was maybe an issue with Scottish Water. Just wondered if you could maybe elaborate on that situation, that you wouldn't be built, there wouldn't be a proposal to build over the top of their facilities.
I'll take that question. We worked with our engineers, and that's the design we will go with. But as Mr. McClure will understand, we cannot apply for it and finalize it until we've got planning in place. That is building warrant stage detail required for permission to build. This could be conditioned. We've got the design here. All it requires is the application to Scottish Water, which will be done by our engineers.
Have you had any initial discussions with Scottish Water, because it's a major issue?
That could be conditioned. We're happy for that design. Engineers did have initial discussions. We need to do a survey of the sewage to know exactly how deep it is, the radius of the sewage. We suspect it's 850 millimeters wide, and then this will dictate the design. We cannot finalize it until we've got all the details, but it costs thousands of pounds. So it really needs to be done at building warrant stage.
Okay, thank you. I'll open up to members here. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Just leading on for the Convener's question, probably an easier question I'll ask. If it's supported, application supported, can the infrastructure for the moving of any works, can it be done?
Can you explain the question, sorry?
If today's application was approved and the drains had to be moved, can it be done?
Yes.
Simple question. My second question is, with regards to the road, Mr McClure stated that it was a private road. Is it a private road, or is it, because it seems to be, it's a very well done private road, may I say. I know the area very well. At the site visit, I walked, when the planning committee went away, I walked round to see the road. It's a wide road for a private road.
Yes, it is a private road. That's a document we received from Falkirk Council stating that this is non-adoptable, meaning private road, and leads to the car park, which we've got right of access to.
Yes, it's just worth reiterating that we have legal advice that our applicant has the right to use the private road for access to develop the site.
Okay.
And that's the letter from the solicitors.
Okay. So where Mr McClure was concerned about or highlighted a footpath, are you saying that the footpath across next to the existing houses will be adequate footpath for the site?
There is existing footpath along that way, and we are proposing 1,500 wide, which is wheelchair turning circle wide, footpath along our site. So this is our site, and footpath would be along here. Access is 4.2 meters wide, only over maybe a couple of meters length, and then it widens and leads into the our private car.
Okay.
So I think it is important to note that there is an existing situation here which has access to the lockups, which has an existing footpath providing access along that particular road. In addition, we are building on that, providing an additional footpath which will benefit not only our development but also the existing lockup, access to the existing lockups.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another thing that Mr McClure highlighted, and you used it in your summary with regards to the trees. I've been in that area for years and years, for my 20s, and Mr McClure designates them as mature trees. I don't know if that's right in my eyes. However, are you satisfied that if the development was to go forward, there is enough scope for where the building is that the trees wouldn't be interfered with?
It's an interesting point you mentioned about the trees themselves. I understand your point. I would suggest that perhaps there's semi-mature trees. We believe at the moment there's, from the roots to the building, there's at least 2 meters. We believe that you could apply a condition to any application which members may consider appropriate to protect those trees, and we can then demonstrate that through satisfying that particular condition that the development can proceed without damage to trees.
Okay.
If we can't do that, there are alternatives. We can replant elsewhere, or make the members may make the judgment that the loss of 3 semi-mature trees is the cost to provide additional housing in Langley's.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't think Falkirk Council can talk about trees when we've just took 450 doing it Westfield.
If I may.
Westfield stayed away. My other question is with regards to the flats, the 1-bedroom flats as stated in there. What size is the the house, what size of bedroom is the house?
The townhouse as
Councillor, do you mean the size in terms of floor area or
No.
number of bedrooms?
Bedrooms.
I need to look up the drawings. 1 sec, sorry. The townhouse has 2 bedrooms. There's 1 double bedroom and a single bedroom.
Fine, that's
And
fine.
in addition, the flats themselves are 1 bedroom with addition of box room, which would help potentially with working from home, etc.
Thank you very much.
It's also just worth the point that I think Stephen had mentioned the potential for provision of social housing, and he is absolutely correct that we do not have a social housing provider in place. However, the information relating to the provision of social housing in Falkirk has informed the design process, and that's why we have provided a number of single 1-bed flats, because it's been identified that there's a need for 1-bed flats in the Falkirk area as a consequence of people downsizing and moving from 2-3 bed houses to a smaller unit.
Thank you very much. And I read it. I stated at the site visit, and when Mr. McClure mentioned that regarding not having an end user, and in many cases it's came forward, similar cases, end users will only come forward until planning's given, and I think it's an unfair question because a company's not going to sign up to something that it's never going to happen if they didn't get permission. So sorry for the long-winded amount of questions, Convener, but thanks very much.
That's what we're here for. We'll have a number online waiting to ask questions. We'll start with Councillor Flynn, then Councillor Nimmo, then Councillor Redmond. Councillor Flynn. You're mute, Councillor Flynn, you're mute.
Sorry, Convener, do you want me to speak or Councillor Redmond?
You're first in line, sir.
Right, thank you. I've only 2, well, one's a question and the other is a general thing. The parking spaces were 1 space short. Will the parking spaces be, as they are in some developments, allocated to particular flats or houses, or will it be free parking?
I would anticipate the standard approach would be to allocate a parking space to each individual property. It's simple by, number 1 gets number 1 parking space, number 2 gets, and there would be then the remaining parking spaces would be available for use for visitors and indeed any other residents in the local area.
So how many free spaces would that mean? Sorry, just to get in my head.
Well, we've got 9 units. We're providing 13 parking spaces, so that would provide a spare 4 parking spaces, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if they were all free parking, then it would avoid any arguments about people trying to park, because I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. There's nothing worse than going to, appreciate allocating a space to an apartment or flat, but there's nothing worse than going to a place and finding out that there's 3 empty spaces that are allocated and there's no spaces for another to park. I'm really just saying, look, perhaps to avoid problems in the future, maybe, it's only a thought, it'd be a good idea to make them all free and not particularly allocate it. It's only a thought. I mean, it's obviously not down to me to decide eventually. It's just a thought in that process.
It's an interesting point. When I was out and I looked at the site this morning again, and the existing parking area, which is under control of the council, I would guesstimate that it's maybe a capacity for maybe 15 to 20 vehicles. Okay. There were maybe 3 to 4.
Okay.
Yep. There this morning, and that was pre 9 o'clock. So you'd expect that would be fairly busy time. Right. So I think from a parking point of view, I think, and I do recognise that Stephen has highlighted that from a technical point of view, we are one space short. But from a pragmatic point of view, I don't think that's a material consideration, and it doesn't merit a refusal of the application. There's plenty of parking spaces available off street. There's plenty of parking spaces available at the existing parking lot, which is, as you pointed out, Councillor, yourself there, it's not allocated and it's been free to use for others. And importantly, and I think I want to stress this point, this is a sustainable site in terms of public transport.
Okay.
So that would negate, again, the requirement for parking.
Just direct questions for you at this time. Any other questions, Councillor Flynn?
Just one more, Convener. Just a straightforward question. You highlighted what is, we all know, across Falkirk, a scourge, which is antisocial behaviour of all different types. And you've mentioned that the current brownfield site is a source of that. Are you able to give, rather than just say, well, it's a source of a locus of people coming to smash bottles, have you any figures that can quantify how bad it is in that area?
No.
No. It's just a general impression that people have received or observed. Is that right? Yeah. It's just to get a feel for how bad it is. That's all.
Yeah, correct. It's a general impression. Yeah.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Convener. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Councillor Nimmo, then Councillor Redmond. Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. And I do share your concerns regarding the issues highlighted with Scottish Water. I think they're very serious, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in that respect. The agent, she actually stated that these plans are not finalised. Now, can I maybe get clarification for officers whether we're actually in a position to deal with this today if the plans haven't been finalised?
Well, I'll come back in on other points as well, Councillor, but the point we've had is that all the issues outstanding from us are there's so many issues that they would actually be a material consideration and would require basically a fresh application to be submitted. That's why we got to the point that we couldn't keep tweaking the design. There is, as I say, just lots of bits and pieces, but they all add up together, ranging obviously from the parking. There's some design issues on the site as well. There's obviously issues like with the trees, etc. Okay. It's just all these parts together obviously create quite a lot of points that would require an amendment to the actual design itself. And then at the point, it would be too many design amendments to take under the current application. So previously, this application was withdrawn. I should point out that we did the previous application. Yeah, sorry.
Stephen, with the greatest respect, it's direct questions at this time to the deputation. There'll be plenty of opportunity for members to ask questions of your good self, and you'll be able to come back in once we've asked the questions and for any more information. So, Councillor Nimmo, have you any direct questions to the applicant at this stage?
Well, I'll put the same question to the agents in that case then, Convener. Why are these plans not finalised before they come before us?
In terms of Scottish Water redesign, we, at the planning stage, we took it as far as we can. We've got design drawing done by engineers who do that on a daily basis. We have been reassured that the sewage can be done. It's the same, well, we can't apply for building warrant without planning application being approved. This is detailed design, and we are talking about planning. Rediverting sewage can be one of the conditions, and it will not affect planning design. If
Can I just add
Yeah.
a point? This is really, as my colleague mentioned, this is a procedural matter. It's a process, a journey that we're through, and each step you get to a stage where you can then move forward. This is touched on there. It's a very technical matter. Will have no material impact on how the building will look, where it will go, etc., etc. It's a very detailed, underground technical matter, which we have the support of qualified engineers to provide a solution, which we will then clarify and confirm through a building warrant. The problem we have at the moment is that building warrants are expensive, time-consuming, and the normal process would be to get planning consent in place. That would allow us then to do these very technical details, what size of joists we're providing, where's specific drainage, etc., through the building warrant process. It's a standard kind of process that developers would normally go through. And so we've gone as far as we can at the moment, reasonably can at the moment,
Right.
in terms of details.
Okay, thanks for that. No, thanks for the clarification. Councillor Nimmo.
Convener, just going by what I've heard, I'm far from convinced regarding what's going on here, but I'll leave it for the time being, and I might come back in during the further discussions.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can I just ask it?
Yeah.
No. I think there are two different things getting here. The plans for the building and what they're asking for are fully complete. What's as I'm not putting any words into the applicant's mouth, as the drainage, the Scottish Water, they can't finalise their drawings for the drainage until it's approved by this committee. So they go to, once it's approved, they can then go to Scottish Water and say, we've got approval, this is our proposal. But that's nothing to do with this planning committee at the moment. That would only happen after a planning permission was granted. But I'm sure, and I'm hopefully the applicants will verify this. But all the details and all the drawings for this application have been submitted. Is that correct?
that is correct. And
Okay,
no.
that's a simple question, a simple answer. Okay, Councillor Nimmo, you can come back in once we've put other members had an opportunity. It's Councillor Nimmo, and I think Councillor Bowes has got his light on as well. Councillor Redmond now. Thank you, sir.
Thanks. I think a lot of my questions have been asked now. Obviously, you were talking about we had a need for social homes. Is that still your intention to try and find a social housing partner, or do you see these being sold by yourselves more as maybe starter homes or pensioners' homes?
The intention for this is still social housing.
Although, having said that, in terms of...
So once you get planning permission, you'll be able to hopefully go and find a...
Yeah,
Lion.
once we get planning permission, that gives certainty to what we can deliver. We will approach other existing housing associations to garner any interest. If that's not the case, I suspect the client will build these units out by themselves and dispose of them on the open market.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions, Councillor Redmond?
Yep. So just for clarity as well, obviously we've heard a lot of, and we've heard it's sewage as well, but we've just heard, I think Mr McClure says it's Scottish Water infrastructure. Is it just sewage, or are we talking a water main as well? Is it, or can we confirm, is it just a combined sewer system or something that's needing moved?
It's just a sewage, just the sewer as per the drawing. And if I may add, I have never been asked to finalize drainage design at planning stage. This is something we are asked at building warrant stage.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Redmond, any other questions?
Councillor Flynn asked that one. So just to confirm, it was kind of my first question, but would you see these more as young starter homes, or are they more suitable towards pensioners?
To support young people mainly.
Young people mainly. I think that'd be ideal.
Considering
That's
20
all my
minutes.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bowes, then Councillor Forrest, and then we'll carry on. Councillor Bowes.
Okay, thank you. This is obviously planning permission. It's a full planning permission. Did you not go for planning permission in principle, which would have given you that surety?
I think it's important to look back the last 20 odd years. Is I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's been 2 residential applications consented on site already. There's quite a extensive planning history. So in terms of principle, and I'm sure Stephen and other council officers would agree, the principle of residential development on this site is well established, and there's no issues in terms of policy relating to that. So from a development point of view, we felt that there was no need or no point really to go for a plan application in principle. We wanted to get a detailed application so we can get something on site built.
So sorry, maybe I didn't want my question that well. Planning permission in principle for this development would have given you the surety to then go and start doing the engineering work, because if planning permission in principle had been approved, that would allow that to go without you having to go to full, and then you go to full later, but by that time you've done the engineering work.
Well, the question in terms of planning applications, and what would we apply? Would we apply for not a blanket residential development? That wouldn't provide in terms of numbers. So Scottish Water would say, well, how many units are you going to provide? Well, we don't know because we've only got planning in principle. So there's issues like that. We've gone as far as we think reasonable to gain planning consent. The next stage will be clarify the points, very technical points in terms of how you actually build the building, in terms of building warrants. What can as I say, what can joist, how the building's actually, that's the next stage. Here we're establishing the principle, but the overarching details of the proposal, so we can then look at the actual very detailed aspects of that.
Just picking up on a point, is it Karen? You said they must pick a point on the bit of the sewage. I think Stephen actually said in his presentation that that's something that does come later, but it's obviously a concern. But it is something that comes later. So although you may have been asked questions about why you've not done that now, because, well, Stephen's already said you don't have to. So hopefully you'll accept that that's something we accept is something that comes later.
Just to clarify, we're not concerned about it. As developers, we are confident in our engineers. We're confident we will have a design solution for this very detailed aspect of the development.
I think it's quite right Stephen brought it up as part of his report, but I think he did make it clear that it was for later stage and building one at that stage. But he did bring it up as something that had to be flagged to the committee. Hopefully he's accept that, and it's not the breaker, as the saying goes.
Councillor Forrest, thank you, Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, convener. I take you back to the social housing aspect of it. Have you had any talks, no matter how tentative, with any of the housing agencies regarding them taking this on?
Paragon seems to be interested.
Paragon. Right. So that would be your primary target.
Well, if we get planning, client will go to them, yes.
Right, okay, thanks. The next one was a general statement that you made without any evidence when asked about antisocial behaviour. You said you didn't have any proof of that, just no was your answer. Can you be sure that when this development takes place, that the antisocial behaviour won't linger around about the car parks area, etc.? I take it that answer is going to be no as well.
Well, when I say evidence. I don't have any evidence. I don't have any police reports, etc. But I do have evidence in that this morning, for example, there's broken glass in the area. There's litter in the area. There's empty cans and bottles located in the area. So from an evidence point of view, I would say from this morning's site visit at 8:30, 8:45 this morning, there is indeed evidence, but I don't have police reports, etc. I think the development would, in terms of passive supervision, reduce the incidences of those types of antisocial behaviour. People, basically, you've got windows and people are looking out. That will discourage antisocial behaviour.
I understand that, but broken glass, litter, etc. I think you'll find in almost any street, any high street, in any of the towns and villages throughout, not just Falkirk. You'll find that anywhere, and that does not always equate to antisocial behaviour, sadly. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Porras. I think it's Councillor Sinclair now. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, convener, and thanks for the presentation this morning. I'm going to take you back to the footpath that you've mentioned, because I didn't quite understand where the footpath would be situated. Now I know you're spoken about the footpath at the opposite side, on the side of 34 Seaforth Road. The footpath that you're talking about, is that I have to be really honest, I cannot see your screen from here. That's a difficulty. So where, because I wonder if we could maybe bring the block plan up that we've seen earlier on with the parking spaces and things like that. What I'm trying to understand is, where is that footpath within the scope of the planning site? And also another question on the back of that, it would appear from the plan that we've seen earlier on, there we are, it would appear that we've seen, if we can scroll up just slightly, to see the far end of the site, if that the north part of the site, if that's okay. There you go. It would appear to me that the site has been extended significantly at the north part, and it removes a significant chunk of the footpath at the other side of the site. Could you confirm that either way, please?
The red line indicates our ownership, and that's within our ownership, and I believe the existing wall has been built there.
So the red site there is the existing wall within the scope of the site.
I believe so, yes.
So what you're telling me here is that because it doesn't appear that the drawing there is to scale as to what is on. Because my understanding is that the site was purely the monoblocked area that is contained within that wall. It would look to me, if that is a scale drawing, that there's a significant part of the footpath at the north side of the site has been removed through that drawing.
I can see what you mean. That's within our ownership. That's client's ownership.
Okay.
So it's not a public footpath.
Okay, and if
it might have been used.
And if that's the case, of what I'm trying to get to here is that it would appear to me then that according to the site plan that we've been given, that is not the full extent of the site that we're looking at. Because to my knowledge and to my understanding of what I believed within the site visit and within the plans here in the report, it's purely the monoblocked area and didn't take into consideration any part of the footpath at either side, because there's no footpath at the other side. There's only the footpath at the north side of the plan. So that was my understanding, and I think when we come to questions directly to officers, convener, I might want clarification on that as well, because I think what we're talking about here is a technical point, that the planning site that's in scope within the report here is not necessarily the planning within the drawings that's on the screen at the moment.
We're not proposing any fencing. The only fence we're proposing is in here.
Can I see that?
Yeah.
It's in between the existing shop and the corner of our proposal. So everything at the front is open.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to get to is, if that is the plan, and I'm looking for clarification here from officers, which will come a wee bit later. If that is the plan, then there is a significant chunk of the existing footpath would be removed from there. So the footpath at the back, which was alluded to in terms of enhancing access to the existing parking and lockups at the back there, where does that come into play? Because I don't think I can see that on your plan there.
We are proposing another footpath at the bottom, so where our parking spaces are,
Yep.
1,500 wide, the line, white line.
So would that then eat into the existing carriageway that's there, that's a private road?
We anticipate,
Yep.
yeah,
So it narrows the carriageway to the private road?
yeah.
Okay.
To 4.2.
4.2.
Meters.
And it's currently?
No, that's what it would be.
What is it?
Post implementation of the additional footpath.
What is it currently?
It's it's going to be. What colour is it?
I think it's around a meter. I can't measure it.
Okay.
because I don't have
Is that
math.
within your ownership? Is that within the scope of the ownership of the site?
That's private, shared private road.
Yeah, I understand that, but do you have the capacity to be able to take over ownership of that?
It's not a question of ownership, Councillor. From our legal advice, my recollection is that we have the right to upgrade. There's a right to upgrade that access road.
Okay.
To serve development. So it's an important point. It's a legal point. But my understanding is, from the information we have available, is we can actually provide that additional footpath. Although from an ownership point of view, it's out with ownership of our clients.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
And if I may add something. So previous planning, I don't know, previous planning application that has been approved for housing on that site, it was very similar. I don't know if maybe.
My understanding.
There are people on lines who can't see that.
So my understanding would that be the previous application was for 6 dwelling houses. That dates back to 2006, 2005-6. Okay. Okay, convener. I think that's everything for now, but I'll ask for clarification with officers when it comes time.
Okay, thank you for that. Have you just sit there a minute just to double check? Councillor Redmond, did you want back in?
Just a final question for Carolina. Obviously, in a lot of these applications, the developers come in and they can do a presentation, and you've wanted to show us a lot of stuff in your laptop. Were you made aware by officers that the option to show a presentation and to put your drawings up was available to you?
I wasn't aware of that. I knew we can put writing statement, written statement, but I didn't know I can do a presentation. So.
It's maybe something that we maybe need to think of, because obviously when members are online and the public see this meeting, it's not a dig at yourself, but or a dig at officers, but this is the kind of modern way of doing things. We're on Teams. It'd be handy if applicants knew that they can bring a presentation in, and they can, if they've got drawings they want to show officers and councillors. I think that'd be a really handy development that we could work on.
Good point, sir. Any further questions to the applicant's agent here? No. Okay, you can take your seats, and thank you very much.
Thank you, convener members. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming back to Stephen. Stephen, you've heard the questions, you've heard the answers. Is there anything you would like to update us on from what you've heard?
Yeah, I should probably go through a few points, Convener, there. In terms of just start with the house and design of the site, there are quite a number of design points we raised with them. Just with the general design, we felt it was quite a poorly designed development in terms of, for example, even access to the rear. There was no access provided from any of the flats or the house to the actual rear garden area. They would all have to come through the front, out the front, round and through just the 2 points. So that would be bringing all your bins round, just accessing into the green if for dry and things like that. So it's the design itself is, say, as we mentioned, there was a previous approval on the site. I should point out, we in principle believe that this site could take some form of development. It's just at the moment, the number of units on the site is really putting pressure on what's required for that number of units on the site. The previous proposal was for 6. It wasn't similar to, it had all the housing to the north, and they actually created like 2 parking courts to the rear of the site. I presume probably in relation to the infrastructure and the various points on the site, that's why the housing was originally kept to the north there. So it was for a smaller development, and it was approved on the site. It just was never taken forward for, I don't have a reason why it wasn't taken forward. In terms of parking, I should point out there's not 1 space missing, there's actually 3 spaces. We've already reduced the number of spaces that they actually require on site because roads considered the parking in front of the shops. We could probably take that as some visitor spaces there. So they actually do require more spaces than the 1 space in the site. Obviously with developments we try and predict, so you could have obviously a few spaces left at night. You could have people living there that have 2 cars each, 1 car each for 2 people, you know, etc. So that's why the numbers there are required on the site. There is public transport available, but obviously it's whether people use it or not. As you know, car use is still high at the moment. One point that nobody has sort of really specifically raised is that the main issue with the road at the bottom there is actually the junction. The junction physically can't have 2 cars passing, so you can't have a car going in and out at the same time as you would normally require for the number of vehicles it would require to access the lock-up sites, and with the additional obviously housing on the site and access in there. To change that junction, they would have to eat into their site, and that's one of the kind of real focuses we've had discussions with them. And again, that's why, as I say, that the moment they would have to sort of alter the design of the site to the point they would require a fresh application. I should point out that we previously had this discussion when they wanted more flats on the site, which they were stating was for social housing in the previous application. We advised them to come back and have a pre-application, basically withdraw the previous application, which they did do, and come in with a pre-application with us so we could work up a design with them that would be suitable for the site. But they chose not to do that and just come in with the current proposal. So again, it had a lot of the same issues as we'd already previously raised with them. The junction is important there because obviously, again, it is a house and estate, so you've got obviously access for a number of pedestrians. There's also children obviously accessing the school, etc. As busy at school drop-off and pick-up point times that street as well there. In terms of as I say, the parking with the footpath, I'm not really clear what they're actually stating there regarding a footpath. As far as I have in the plans, I don't have any footpath on the southern side. There is an existing footpath at the very southern over the road, but they would actually require a footpath obviously on the what would be the northern side of the private roads, which would allow access to obviously the parking, which they're proposing, and obviously access from round there into the site. So as you see at the moment, there's only the footpath to the south there. There is a small footpath that's 900 metres wide proposed for part of the site to the north there, but it doesn't run the full length and it doesn't join into the current public footpath from what the plans I have. I don't know if they're looking at some other amended plan or the likes, but I don't have that. It's just the plan that you've all seen today that's on there. In terms of social housing being brought up again, I should just probably read out to committee the formal response from our housing services. They said that this project, so the site basically has not been put forward by any of the housing companies, and it's not in the SHIP basically proposals that were put forward in October last year there. It says this site, that they said in the last response from social housing companies and managers there, this is not a site we would support for affordable housing due to comments from our housing management colleagues who said that additional flats in that location would likely cause management problems, raising issues like insufficient parking and lack of sufficient space for refuse bins, adding to the waste management problems, and all deemed adversely impact on the existing council tenants around the site. So it has been looked at in the past by all the companies. I don't have any information. I'd say that's new information to me. If they've had some initial discussions with Paragon, obviously that they would need to obviously show that to us, essentially, if they want to take it down the route again as social housing. But as I say, for committee purposes at the moment, our own housing services have noted that there is no interest in the site. It's not in any of our strategic proposals for the future. It's not proposed for any funding, etc. And it has been looked at already by the companies that provide social housing, and they've dismissed the site. They don't want to take it on there. So as I say, that's the only information I have to date on that. In terms of the footpath to the north of the site, I think it was Councillor Sinclair that raised that. There is, so just to let you know, if we could move up, if we can maybe move this round, there is, if you see this, the kind of bit that, so they've got the wall and the fence, and if you see this sort of rectangular bit that comes out from that that's been tarmacked, that is actually their site. So the footpath, the adopted footpath is just beyond that. So where the post box is, and you can see in the difference in the distance, that's the back of our footpath in terms of the council's footpath. So the site does extend out there in terms of their ownership from that red block bit there. So that's the bit that you'll see on the plan that pops out. So the red post box there is our council adopted footpath there that goes along the front of the site. So it is kind of just projects slightly out from there on that. And as I say, it's not, as I say again, the principle of this site being developed. It's just at the moment, obviously, the development that's been put forward. Again, the house, again, I'll raise as well. The house doesn't have any of the facilities you normally have for a house. I can't think of any house in the past that I've dealt with that doesn't have its own private garden or parking areas, because they just function slightly different, obviously, from flats. They're not usually communal in nature in that respect. So again, I say the principle of something going the site has been proven in the past. There's smaller developments, obviously, that can accommodate everything that's required there. Obviously, Langleys has had a lot put into it by the council in the past, and obviously want to improve the area as well. So obviously, it's anything going on the Langleys area and in the new developments, we've looked to obviously ensure that it meets all the criteria and standard for going in, to ensure that it's future-proofed and obviously is functional as a proper housing site. And again, as I say, it's that junction at the back there that you need to consider as well. Just obviously to future-proof the road, ensure obviously access is properly for two vehicles passing, coming out. But obviously in the future, if anything was to happen with the lock-up site as well, again, the junction would have to be ensured that it was to the current standard. And at the moment, to kind of move and shift the junction, we would need to kind of eat into their site slightly, because there's, to the southern side is just garden ground, someone's own garden there. And in relation to the trees, the buildings themselves are quite far back from the trees, but they are proposing a footpath right against the trees there. Again, obviously, it would depend on the root structure, and obviously a footpath going down would essentially damage roots there, and obviously just the weight and the compacting of soil, obviously, again, could damage the root structure depending how it is. It depends on the species of the trees, obviously, and the root structures that come out from them. But again, that's something that would have to have been investigated, which it hasn't. It's also, the trees are out with their land boundary, so they don't own them in terms of the land out with that. And just to finalise, final point, sorry, I know I'm going through quite a lot here, is that the Scottish Water at the moment have no objection in terms of sewage and fresh water going in. What they normally do is on their consultation, they will highlight any other infrastructure they have on the site. So it's just to highlight at this stage, that would normally be a later point that they would have to go away and resolve with Scottish Water. So it's not directly related for something we would condition at this stage, but it is highlighted because, as I say, it's normally on structures like that, they wouldn't normally have any buildings on them. So that's why normally sites design around them. For example, the previous site only had parking on it. They didn't have any actual built structures on it to allow obviously access into it. So it's just for the Scottish Water asks us to pass this information on as part of the consultation process there. So that's why it is highlighted to members, because it is in the consultation there. So I hope I've gone through quite a lot there, but I'm happy to take any further questions obviously from members.
Thank you, Stephen. That was very fulsome, and I'm sure that members have got questions. We're also going to bring in our planning manager, Mr. Broadley, and also we're hopefully going to talk to one of our roads. I think hopefully it'll be Craig Russell. But first of all, for members here and members online, is there any direct questions to our planning officer, Mr. McClure, in relation to the many areas that he's covered already? Have we any questions?
Convener, I just looked
Provost.
Mr. McClure mentioned something about school drop-off, but the school's not anywhere near that site.
Yeah, it seems to just be that it's I don't know if people just wait there or the likes, but it seems to be busy. And talking to some residents when I've been down with site visits and phone calls, that's one of the things that they highlighted. It's not something I don't, obviously, I'm not down there every day at the school drop-off, but they did highlight that it's busy at these points. So I presume it's maybe just that they maybe people wait there or the likes before going round to the school to pick people up. I'm not entirely sure, but it was a point that was raised that it's a busy at these times.
I've never heard that before over all the years, so it's a wee bit kind of news to me. Okay, that's all now.
Thank you. Councillor Sinclair?
Perhaps, Convener, if I could maybe clarify that the point that the Provost makes. There's a significant number of high school children way directly across from this site on school bus, and that's perhaps school drop-off and pick-up that is being mentioned there, because I'm aware Langleys Primary School sits further across the area. Stephen, just a very quick question here. I'm looking at the report, paragraph 1.1. The site consists of an area of brownfield land located within the established residential area of Langleys and Falkirk. The land is currently mainly monoblocked and is surrounded by a low wall with fencing on top. Now, that's the point that's perhaps caused me some confusion here, because when we were out on site as well, it was described as the monoblocked area with the low wall in the surrounding area. As we've seen from the drawing that was put up just a moment ago on screen, the site is somewhat extended to the north of that low wall, and that is, as I believe, the ownership area, but perhaps wasn't my understanding and was slightly unclear within the report. I wonder if you could give us a bit more information on that from your perspective and where we can clarify on this, and perhaps if required, Mr. Broadley could come in at any point.
Yeah, sorry, I think it's just with the bulk of the developments on the brownfield site, it's probably just a slight wording with the report there, sorry. It's the buildings themselves, there's no physical, there's only grass proposed and a couple of access paths on the kind of extended area, but the bulk of everything's on the monoblocked area. So it's probably just the wording, sorry, that first paragraph there, but it does include the small extension of, as I say, it's kind of marked out almost in the tarmacked area because of the way it's been tarmacked, but it's that rectangular block. There's no physical buildings on that site. The buildings are on the monoblock section. So the buildings would be essentially where the wall is coming along there, and then it would be just access paths from what would be the footpath, the actual adopted footpath at the north there.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that, Stephen. Thanks, Convener. I think the area to the rear, obviously there is shared access there. The junction at that point, do you know of, or has there been any evidence of snarling there in terms of traffic and in terms of the volume of traffic at that point? I know that it is a bus route, just not 10 metres away from that site. There's an area that's traffic calmed there. Do you know of any issues with public transport stopping at that point that causes traffic to and from? Wonder if you could clarify on that, or if there's anybody from Roads who'd be able to clarify on that.
We're going to bring Craig Russell in for Roads as well, and it'll give us a full overview. Okay, we'll bring you in just now, Craig. You've heard Councillor Sinclair, and if you can maybe answer the question he'd asked and maybe give us an overview now that you're on.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. In response to the query about snarling, I'm not aware of any issues there. Not to say that there aren't any that haven't been reported. In terms of the overview, I think Stephen's done, a great job in representing the comments that we made in relation to parking, in relation to access to the site. and any other matters that we contained in our response, Councillor.
Yep, Craig, just when you're on, as I say, is it an opportunity to you to give us a complete overview for Falkirk Council's Road Department in this application? Thank you.
Convener, could you clarify what you're looking for in terms of an overview? We've given comment in response to this application at shortened parking spaces. We've asked for the entrance to the parking area to be increased. We've made comment on the footway provision. I'm not sure what else I can add in terms of an overview. Apologies.
Well, that's fine, because we're getting it straight for the horse's mouth with you stating that. That's a lot better than just reading. So, okay, thank you for that. So you have nothing else to add at this stage?
Nothing at this stage, Convener. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Back to you, Councillor Sinclair.
No, thanks, Convener. I don't have any further questions at this point, but I may come back in later on in the debate.
Okay, Glenn, I've seen your light on. We've got officers here.
Yep, thank you, Convener. If I may ask yourself, Stephen, it's been highlighted this is a monoblock area, etc. Now, just to give you a wee bit of history, I probably, and I'm talking about a long time ago, for about 15, 20 years, travelled that road 3, 4, 5 times a week, over that period of time. So at that time, I was well familiar with it. But prior to it being a monoblocked area, prior to it being a brownfield site, and it might be a long time ago, there were obviously other buildings on it, houses or whatever. I don't remember a way back. My memory is a bit sort of lax there. Remembering that as a monoblock area, I remember going to the shop many times. So what was there previously on that site, in terms of houses, number of houses, if that makes sense, Stephen?
As far as I'm aware, it was a commercial unit. I don't have much detail on that from our own history, just because of the length of time that it seems to have been vacated in terms of the building. So it seems to have been a commercial unit of some sort on it in the past. But as I say, it's prior to that, we only have this sort of history go back to the kind of monoblocked area for when it was used. Right. It got some funding, obviously, to kind of spruce it up and use it as a kind of essentially a small kind of physical kind of play area, different things, but that's kind of gone by the wayside as well. It's not been used really at all for anything. As again, I can say as what other people have observed when I was down, it is kind of littered with glass and rubbish and things. So, and it's not been maintained, obviously, internally as well. There's all the kind of painting and the likes is all worn away and gone for most of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Perhaps I can't believe a large site like that would have just been, maybe I agree with you, Stephen, probably another business there, but it's quite a big site. So I don't know if anybody on the committee who maybe lived or knew that area more intensely would remember what was there previously, because it's been. Sorry, yep. If it's only for apologies.
No apologies. It's a good question, and we've got one of the local members, Councillor Sinclair, will come in at that stage and maybe give us a historical view.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. As Councillor Kerr rightly points out, I am what you would consider to be an interloper. The shops, there was a row of shops there. It was 3 or 4 buildings that contained commercial units, but it was contained within one larger commercial unit, but it was 3 or 4 shops. The site was sort of empty when I moved in to Lomond Drive, which is just down the road, back in 2007-8 sort of thing. But yeah, it was since then the history of the site, as Stephen mentions there, it was given some funding to a community group which provided a cycle proficiency area, which was used for a good number of years, and obviously it's become the site that it is over time. So, but yeah, it was a row of shops at that point. There was no more than 3 or 4, and that's from the perspective of speaking to residents and speaking to community folks down there over the past few years, and who have shown me photographs of the shops that was there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks, Councillor Sinclair. It clarifies in my mind, it rings a bell in my mind about that as well. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for your input, Councillor Flynn. Now have Provost Bissett.
Thanks very much, Convener. I grew up just across from that site, and what used to be there next to the building that's here just now used to be the cooperative, and next to it was a a grocer's shop. Next to that was a chip shop, and next to that was a hairdresser. Next to that was another grocer's shop. Next to that was a butcher's. Next to that was a chemist. So it was quite a. There was a lot of shops on that site, and when it was all knocked down, it was just derelict. And then a number of years ago, the previous councillor there, Craig Martin, he worked with a local group to get some funding to monoblock it, and there was a wee kind of, it was a track for kids to learn to cycle and stuff like that, but it all just fell away. And over the years, there's been so much antisocial behaviour there. I don't know how many reports I've had. I've even been down there myself, sweeping up the glass, because it's not a council site. So there's been an awful lot of antisocial behaviour. Kids hanging about and throwing their bottles into the area and just generally hanging about and creating a mischief. So that's the kind of history of the site, and it's been an area that's been derelict for many years. So it needs something.
Thanks for your input, Provost. I'm looking at members now. We've had a very lengthy debate. We'll get Councillor Redmond one in again. Thank you, sir.
Just a quick question. Would Craig Russell be able to tell us what is the minimum width of a pavement? What should the minimum width of a pavement be?
Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. We request, excuse me, we request that new pavements are provided at a minimum width of 2 metres. So that's contained within your National Roads Development Guide. There are situations where the width can be reduced. There's a document called Inclusive Mobility, which considers access for disabled people and situations like that, and it recommends a minimum width of 1,500 down to an absolute minimum of 1 metre over a length of 6 metres. However, where we're dealing with new development, we see no reason that 2 metres can't be achieved.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now, we've had a lengthy debate. How are members feeling in relation to a decision on this application? Provost Bissett.
Convener, as I said, I was brought up in Langley's, just across from that site, and over the years I've begun to see Langley's develop, and places get knocked down and new properties go up, and it's changing. So, but this particular site has for many years been a blight in the landscape, and I've looked with interest to see developments coming forward, and they've never happened. And as I said, there's been a great deal of antisocial behaviour. So for me, I would welcome a development on that site. I don't think there's anything that can't be overcome with conditions attached, whether it be Scottish Water or whether it's a parking or whatever. I don't think there's anything that can be overcome. I think it would be a significant improvement for the area. It's an area of high deprivation, and any change we can bring about that area, for me, would be very worthwhile. So for me, I'm minded to grant the application, so I would formally move to grant the application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, Convener. I've heard all the arguments that have been put forward and listened to the discussions that have been ongoing. I agree with the Provost in the respect to the area. It needs to be redeveloped quite urgently. So I'd be quite happy to second them in relation to this proposal. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Nimmo. Just to clarify, our motion moved and seconded. I'm now going to Councillor Bowes and then Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. Craig, sorry, coming back to you, and I appreciate what Provost has said, and to be honest with you, would I like to get developing on that area? Yeah, probably would. But is this the right development? Because that's the question that's got to be in my head. The access difficulties when you've got the lane and it's not going to be two-way traffic. Will we be able to do? Will we, without significantly changing the current application, will we be able to get that access, or will it take a significant change to get that? The pathway as well, which as you've already said, 2 metres. Yeah, I wouldn't have held back the development for 400 millimetres. From what I can tell, it's going to be 1.6. but can these, the big one for me is the access, and will that be able to be done without significant change to the development?
Through you, convener, I'm not sure I can answer that, unfortunately, Councillor Boyce. My interpretation of what I think would be a significant alteration, you know, I could make that decision without any consideration of cost or land take or anything that the applicant would need to consider. So I don't think I can answer that, I'm afraid. You know, somebody displayed the site plan earlier, and the knuckle area to the south of the private access, that's your sort of constraint there. So we need to offset that 5.5 metres. That's going to eat into a section of public footway on the north of the private access. However, you'd have to extend that eastward to tie back into your parking area. So the applicant would need to consider how that affects their site layout, whether that requires their block of parking spaces to be pushed further eastward. It probably wouldn't be fair of me on the applicant to say that would not be significant. I couldn't determine that, I'm afraid, Councillor.
Sorry, that's exactly what I was thinking. That a bit, because the knuckle obviously showed quite badly coming across on the road, and it's the application is what it is. I think if it didn't have the single house, I think they probably would have the space to get this and doing the flats. I still think they would have to make significant changes to it, and that's why it's got to be thought about a bit more than just any. It's great to get development in the areas that need it, but we've got to get the right development in. And that's probably our responsibility today.
Okay, Councillor Sinclair, then Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, convener. I think the stage that I'm at here is that there are far too many unanswered questions and far too many concerns that I have on this particular application. I don't disagree that the site needs to be developed. I would welcome some sort of development on this site, on this particular site, but I'm really struggling to find a way forward for me to accept that this is the right application for that site. I believe wholeheartedly that that this would represent overdevelopment on this site. I think there's too many unanswered questions about access. The waste management system, the waste management proposals that have been put forward give me serious concern that it would only exacerbate the existing issues that are there. There's already been talk about litter and broken glass in the area. I think on personal experience, there's a lot of that is can be considered to be people littering. There's also a lot of that could be considered that every house up and down that street lives in a wind tunnel, and the bins can sometimes have their lids flipped open and rubbish can sometimes come out of those bins. I don't think it's not necessarily precisely down to antisocial behaviour or kids in the area just being louts. I don't think that's a fair representation at all. I think what also gives me more serious concern than anything, though, is the fact that over 2 planning documents, one national, one local, there are 14 separate policies that this application does not accord with. That needs to be given serious consideration. But what concerns me more than anything is one of the points that Stephen made in his submissions through the questioning, is that there is so much information that we require as a planning authority that has to be given, that is a material consideration that has not been answered sufficiently, and there's not enough information to go on there. Although there are detailed designs, I think it's been unclear to me exactly where the proposal will not have an impact, but where it does have an impact, I think gives me more cause for concern than anything. And I would be happy to move the recommendations within the report that refuses the application on those merits.
Okay, thank you. Bailey Kerr.
Thanks, convener. With regards to as we mentioned, the knuckle part of the road, for me, that gives me an assurance that the road safety is a better way. So you need to be careful when you're coming to that junction to go out and come in. And to be fair, I've mentioned at other meetings, it's no the M25 we're talking here. It's a private road. So the condition also, no the condition, but the suggestion of the 2 metre footpath as a guidance. It's a private road we're talking. And as Councillor Sinclair mentioned about policies, as down here is meeting a number of policies. Just sitting here when the applicant and Mr McClure was going through, I went on and looked at the policies regarding what Mr McClure says it doesn't meet. And I've says it at every meeting, it's people's interpretation of those policies, Convener. Policy 6, forestry, wood and trees. I didn't get that. There are 3 trees on the site. If they're to be removed, they can be removed and replaced other areas. As I said before, we've no problem with moving 450 trees at Westfield. Hopefully we'll replace them another area. Policy number 9, the policy intent, promote and facilitate the reuse of brownfield, vacant and derelict land and empty buildings. My interpretation that this site meets that policy 9. Policy 12, zero waste, has been highlighted that there will be areas for the bins. And what we're saying is we're going to refuse planning application for much needed 1-bedroom houses because we can't get bins. Policy 13, sustainable transport. There is a bus stop right at the doorstep, easy access to amenities. You've got the dentist round the corner, you've got the shop, you've got the school, you've got walking areas to different workplaces. It meets every policy. Policy 13, policy 14, design quality and place. It's 1-bedroom flats. We are shouting out for these properties all over Falkirk. So we're refusing it on the design and quality. I've not seen a design, but when somebody's saying that we're refusing it because it doesn't meet that, that's an interpretation. I'm looking at something that's got to provide 1-bedroom, either for Councillor Redmond brought it up earlier. It can either be social housing, it can either mean somebody starting afresh as a 1-bedroom to get them on the property ladder. These are the developments that we should be supporting. And if there's issues, let the issues be sorted out after the permission has been given. Policy 15, living in a local 20-minute neighbourhood, meets that, wholeheartedly meets that. As I mentioned before, in the sustainable transport, local living, 20-minute neighbourhoods. You get the shops, employment, schools, childcare, parks. Policy 16 says it didn't meet it. Policy 16 in National Planning Frameworks 4 says it'll be supported if it's affordable homes, homes for the elderly, homes for people undertaking further or higher education, homes for self-provided homes. It meets that. And I take on board Councillor Sinclair's view that the officer has highlighted the reasons for refusal. But that's officer's interpretation of the policies. But they can easily be flipped to support the application. and I'll formally support the proposal by the Provost and Councillor Nimmo. Convener.
Okay, thank you, Billy Kerr. Councillor Redmond?
Well, thanks. I think it's been a really interesting debate. We've covered all the bases. I think Stephen and the applicants have done a good job at putting their cases forward. I think we've covered all the debate. So drainage, it is an issue, but I think we're quite confident that it is a building work issue and it is something that can be dealt with. You know, there's drains and sewers everywhere. There's probably any site you go to, there is going to be some sort of drainage or water mains or whatever that needs moved. So it's a challenge, but it's no insurmountable. The pavement, you know, looking at what we've seen at the site and at Google Earth, the existing council pavement is already very wide. In fact, even if we took the applicant site away, the pavement at the shop side up to the post box, it would still be larger than the pavement at the other side of the road. So for me, I don't really see the pavement as much of an issue. The trees are far away from the buildings. I would think that surely we'd be able to build a path without damaging the trees in such a way that the trees would have to be taken away. So I hope I'd really hope we could retain the trees, but I think it is doable to retain the trees. The junction, you know, ideally you would want a big junction, but then I sort of take Councillor Kerr's points as well. Like if we had an open junction, people could come round fast, but it's a good traffic calming measure. People need to slow down, take their time. So I suppose that could be argued. I suppose the thing is, we've got an application in front of us, and there's faults in it, and it isn't perfect. And it's just the challenges of developing on brownfield sites. You know, as Mr. Russell says, minimum pavement width, we want 2 metres. The only way we can really develop something to meet every standard and every policy is if we're building a brand new town. And we need to be a bit flexible because we want to bring these brownfield sites back into use. And to rigidly hold all the policies, you know, it's not really practical in an already built up area. And it is really, really important that we bring these brownfield sites back into use. They've got good links to public transport. People can, you know, get housing near their families and things. And, you know, on housing, you know, Scotland's just declared a housing emergency. So there is a real demand for these housing, and we need them at the end of the day. So I'm obviously quite happy with the development. The one kind of thing I'm thinking about is the developer contributions, because in page 55 it says contributions will be required, but we've not really got any amounts next to them yet. So I was wondering, would officers maybe be able to expand if planning permission was granted today? How would they work it? Would they still be able to go away and work out the development contributions, and would that still be delivered for the local area?
A good point, Councillor Redmond. We'll get officers here. Stephen, can you give us any information in regarding that question from Councillor Redmond?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going down to page 55. There shouldn't be any contributions required for the site. It's not large enough on it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where it's not in the, is that a policy?
Well, it says developers will be required to contribute to the provision, upgrading, and where applicable, the maintenance of infrastructure, where development will create or exacerbate deficiencies and impose significant increased burdens on existing infrastructure.
Yeah, sorry. That's the actual policy, but the requirement for this site doesn't breach the policy requirements for contributions. It's too small a site to require anything in regards to that.
Fair enough. Thanks for putting that up.
No, well picked up. Well picked up, Councillor Redmond.
For this motion. Thank you. Thanks, Convener.
No, thank you, sir, for your input. Councillor Forrest, and then back to Councillor Bowes. Councillor Forrest.
Thanks, Convener. I'm in a bit of a quandary here because having been to the site visit and seen it, it is a site that you would say definitely does need development. It needs it badly. It's a pretty shabby looking area. And to be honest, almost anything else would be an improvement on it. However, it still looks to me like an overdevelopment. There are 14 separate policy discrepancies that we've counted. The parking space, the bin stores, the trees, just a few. And Councillor Kerr mentioned about the bins. We're going to refuse it because of the bins. No, we're not, actually. The thing is that we're supposed to want the best for our residents. You know, any of our houses that we want built are to be done to the best possible standard. Now, if you're short a bin store, that's insufficient. If you're short parking spaces, it's insufficient. We've got a pretty good record on house building. If that house was not included in the plan, then there would be sufficient room for all of the other things. Therefore, one thing is preventing a decent standard throughout. You remove that, and those flats could become, you know, top quality. I wouldn't fancy living in a flat where there's only 2 entrances, one at either end, I take it, and having to trail all your stuff to the bin store. It's just not sufficient. And therefore, I agree with my colleague, Councillor Sinclair, that this is an overdevelopment. And therefore, I'm happy to second it.
Okay, just to clarify where we are, we've got a motion moved and seconded to grant the application, and we have an amendment now moved and seconded to agree with the recommendations to refuse. Councillor Bowes, you're way down there, but I can see you, sir.
Hiding in the corner. I find it very interesting. The debate's been quite extensive, and I agree with a lot of what's said, and I disagree with quite a bit that's been said as well. Yeah, it doesn't comply with 14 policies. Yes, Langley's could be doing with these houses. It could be doing with development, and especially if it's going to go to a housing association. But I don't think that we can put lesser quality, lesser standards on the houses in Langley's. I think Langley's should be treated with the same standards as everywhere else is. And I appreciate people can make their own opinions on the policies, but following Stephen's as our planning professional on this, and I tend to agree with him. I'm worried that we're giving the go-ahead to something which is not complying with far too many policies. I have argued in the past, if there's been a car parking situation where we're being 2 or 3 car park spaces short, and went, no, we need to build that. But it wasn't not complying with 14 different policies. I please ask members to think about that. It's not just 1 or 2. It's not an easy cover. I don't know if Stephen, if there was more time granted with it, if he could work with the developer to reduce some of these, I don't know if that would help at all. But I'm really concerned that we're going to, or we potentially will approve an application where the compliance with the normal policies that we work with, there's 14 of them, it doesn't comply with. And that really gives me some concerns about about any decision.
Okay, thank you for your input, Councillor Bowes. Any other members, both here and online, want to come into the debate before we finalise and go to the vote? But first of all, I'll bring in Mr Henderson for some legal interpretation of what's been said in terms of the motion.
Thank you, Convener. And is just to note that particularly where there's a motion which is against officer recommendation, that clear reasons are given for the motion. And it was just to clarify with yourself, the mover and the seconder, and that's Provost Bissett and Councillor Nimmo, who moved and seconded the motion, the terms of the motion. I've noted that there are certain material considerations which are considered to be of significant and determinative weight. I've noted that the committee is satisfied as to the suitability of the site for the proposed development and considers it will enhance the appearance and character of the area, noting that the site is currently in a state of poor repair and condition. So I think that was a core of what was said. I would also pick up on just a point around traffic, parking, access and egress. Now the application makes provision for it in the way that it makes it. And I think given that that was an important aspect of the officer report, that it would be worth clarifying with the mover and seconder if they wish to note that the committee is satisfied as to parking provision for the proposed development, the means of access and egress, both pedestrian and vehicular, and matters of road safety. Would that be something that the members would be agreeable to be included in the reasons? I think it was by necessary implication from the discussion, but I think it's worth checking.
Yep, I'm happy with that, Mr Henderson.
And
yeah, I'm happy as well, Convener, to go along with what Mr Henderson has said.
And Convener, I think you also need to agree where wording is amended in terms of a motion. Are you also agreeable? I think there was also mention of the conditions that may be applied. And we would normally note, if the committee was agreeable, a delegation to the Director of Police Services to impose appropriate conditions and indeed informatives. But with the grant of permission, including specific planning conditions that were noted, and the ones I noted from discussion were in relation to trees, in relation to drainage and sewerage, and in relation to treatment of waste. Is that
agreed? Fine.
Happy with that.
Will I just clarify and run through? So we have a motion by the Provost Bissett, which is seconded by Councillor Nimmo, and that is the committee, having considered the officer report, the development plan and material considerations, agrees to grant planning permission as the following material considerations are considered to be of significant and determinative weight. The committee is satisfied as to the suitability of the site for the proposed development, and the committee considers that the development will enhance the appearance and character of the area, noting that the site is currently in a state of poor repair and condition. And the committee is satisfied as to parking provision for the proposed development, means of access and egress, both pedestrian and vehicular, and matters of road safety. And then the committee agrees to delegate to the Director of Police Services to impose appropriate conditions on the grant of planning permission, including conditions in relation to treatment of trees, drainage and sewerage, and treatment of waste. And then we have an amendment which was made by Councillor Sinclair and seconded by Councillor Forrest, and that was to refuse the grant of permission in accordance with the officer recommendations. So by way of a roll call, running through each member in turn, Provost Bissett.
Motion.
Councillor Bowes.
Amendment.
Bailey Buchanan.
Motion.
Councillor Colley is absent. Councillor Flynn.
Motion.
Councillor Forrest.
Amendment.
Councillor Kelly.
Motion.
Bailey Kerr.
Motion.
Councillor Murtagh is absent. Councillor Nimmo.
Motion.
Councillor Redmond.
Motion.
And Councillor Sinclair.
Amendment.
We have 7 votes for the motion and 3 for the amendment, and the motion is accordingly carried. Thank you, convener.
Thank you for everybody. That was a lengthy debate, a very, very open and transparent debate. It's now an opportunity for a comfort break. It's 12:05. We'll come back here at 15:15 to continue the business. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. We'll reconvene the meeting now.
Excuse me, convener. May I interrupt? Sorry. I should have mentioned before the break, but I didn't get the chance to. I have to go to a medical appointment soon. So could I please be excused for the rest of the meeting because I'm running short on time.
Okay, Councillor Flanagan, I hope you got on fine. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're reconvening. We're going to item 6 on your agenda this morning. It's construction of outbuilding retrospective at 31 Hawthorne Drive, Dunipace, Denny, for Mr. Brian Meehan. Now, just to say at the very beginning that an application had been made by Councillor McCabe, the local member, to be received as a deputation. You will know that one of the earlier items on the agenda that we discussed the issue about Councillor McCabe being unable to attend, and members agreed to continue. The fact is that that item stood alone. This is another item, and therefore I'm going to pass you over again to Mr. Henderson just to give us an overview of the legality regarding this, because I don't think that members just feel that because we've already agreed initially for a continuation of that last item that they have to do the same for this one. So I'll just go to Mr. Henderson. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, convener. And the issue is very similar as per the initial item. There is a slight distinction in this case, and it's just looking at paragraph 1.1 of the report. It refers to, I think, the construction taking place in August 2020. And the reason I point members to that is that members may be aware that certain forms of development, including building, can be immune from enforcement action 4 years from their substantial completion. So I think if the shed was constructed around August 2020, we're on the cusp of the 4-year period elapsing. Now, my understanding is that no enforcement action has been commenced to date. So I'm just flagging up to the committee that if it took a decision to continue the application to a future meeting, it would likely take that meeting to a point where it may be that the applicant would be able to argue that the construction had been there for the 4-year period and was therefore immune from enforcement action, and for want of a better phrase, would become lawful development. So I think the committee's maybe got, mindful of Councillor McCabe's position in terms of calling in, seeking to make a deputation. But there maybe is another consideration to be taken account in terms of timescale for this application. Thank you, convener.
No, thank you, Mr. Henderson. Considering what you said, I'm quite happy to move that we hear this application this morning.
Could I ask Mr. Henderson, if we continued this for a site visit, would that still take us within?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Convener. If we continued for a site visit, the site visit dates I think are set, but the next meeting of the Planning Committee would be in August. And according to the report, the construction was carried out in August 2020. And indeed, it may be, and I could maybe bring in Mr. Vivian, who I think has been having a closer look at the timescale for what's considered to be substantial completion of the building. I don't know, Brent, if you're able to come in on that.
Yeah, just to add, since this report was written, we've received evidence from the applicant to indicate the actual completion date was earlier than August. It was the 11th of July. So obviously, bear in mind that what is in the report is not actually correct as we now understand it. It's an earlier completion date than August.
Okay, thank you. Now.
Okay, you've heard both Mr. Henderson and Mr. Vivian in relation to this. I'm quite happy to go ahead this morning. Councillor Nimmo, how do you feel?
Oh, just based on, I was wondering if Mr. Henderson could just confirm whether this time constraint can be extended, bearing in mind the circumstances with Mr. McCabe, Councillor McCabe, sorry, not being able to attend. I think we need to be consistent and fair. We already extended that courtesy to a previous application, and I think we should really do the same courtesy in respect to this one.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Nimmo. I'm not aware of a basis on which the 4-year time limit could be extended. I think I appreciate your point about consistency of treatment. I'm just flagging up the nuance to this application, which introduces different information from the position of the original report that was agreed to be continued. I should also add, it's obviously for the committee to take a decision on grant of permission or refusal of permission. And the point I think I'm raising is if the committee was minded to refuse permission, then I think we would end up in a situation potentially where the applicant could say, well, you didn't take any enforcement action for a period of 4 years from the point at which I substantially completed the building of the structure. Therefore, do your worst in enforcement because I believe I'm now immune from enforcement action and it could be considered lawful development. So I completely take your point about consistency of treatment, but I think there's just a slight different nuance to the background in relation to this application. Thanks, Councillor Nimmo.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Convener.
Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. That was quite eye-opening, to be honest with you. I might be wrong, but can you just clarify something for me? So if we go refuse, it sounds as if the person who owns the property could just say, do your worst.
Thanks,
So
and thanks for seeking thanks for seeking the clarification, Councillor Bowes. I'm thinking of that more in the context if there was a decision taken to refuse, say, at the point at which the 4 years had elapsed. The 4 years have not elapsed at this stage. So if the committee was minded to refuse to grant permission, and that's obviously the committee needs to discuss the matter, then I would imagine, in passing over to my planning colleagues, they would swing into action to ensure that some form of compliant enforcement discussions took place with the applicant in advance of the expiry of the 4-year period. And I think Mr. Whittle's happy to come in.
Thank you, Ian. Yes, Councillor Bowes, just to clarify on that point, in relation to the 4-year rule, if members today were minded to refuse planning permission for the development, then provided an enforcement notice was then served before the 4-year period lapsed, that effectively stops the clock on that 4-year period. So the development would only become immune from enforcement after the 4-year period has elapsed from that date Brent has given us in July. So I hope that helps.
Yep, thank you. So how do members feel then?
I think we should continue.
Continue?
Yep.
I've got lights on Provost Bissett.
So I would like, from a democratic point of view, for Councillor McCabe to be heard, because I don't know what he's going to say. But it'd been good if he had submitted a written statement. Even the committee could just have read over it. But I think in this case, slightly different for the last one. So I think I'm minded to continue as well.
Okay, Bailey Kerr.
No,
Sorry.
Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks again, Bailey Kerr. Thanks, Convener. Just to clarify, by continue, we mean proceed to determine the application today. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. I think as a committee we've been in this situation several times since the turn of the year, probably since the turn of the new council session last August. There seems to be perhaps a lack of clarity on what can be provided by prospective deputies ahead of a committee. We've seen it in the past where documents have been provided on the day of committee, which has led to confusion and again a lack of clarity and uncertainty, where we have continued applications, sometimes in certain cases for a couple of months, to go to a site visit and to consider the information that's been provided, only to then determine the application was within the officer's recommendations as it stood. I think as a committee we need to be mindful that, as Bailey Kerr has mentioned eloquently on several occasions, that almost every planning committee I've been a part of, this is people's lives we are dealing with. And we have a duty to make timious decisions based on the facts that are presented to us on the day. And we also have to be mindful that there are members of the planning committee who are not here. They have submitted apologies in advance of the meeting, and their opinions may also be as equally valid. So I would hasten to think, I would hate to think that we are not providing, from a democratic sense, the opportunity for every member to, but then that again sets a precedent. Do we continue every application that's on our agenda in order for every member to have their say? And I don't think that that is a reasonable or sustainable position for this committee to take.
Well said. So anybody else like to come in at this stage? You've heard, just to simplify the issue, we held this back to the August committee. Then the date for the 4 years is in July. So that, just to simplify it. So, Councillor Bowes.
Okay, Convener, I'm going to be really consistent here. In the first one, I said that we should have done that as well. My concern is we set a precedent where, say I couldn't get to the meeting and I wanted to contribute to all the items. If I then wrote to you and Mr. Henderson and says, I've got important contributions I could make to all of them, would we have to then cancel the whole planning meeting?
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm really worried that we're setting a precedent here. And I think it's something which, yes, we have to proceed with this here, and I wish we'd have proceeded with the first one as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Bowes. Okay, we've a general debate in relation to discussing, are we carrying on? I'm quite happy to carry on this morning in relation to the information received in the legal sense. Is anybody otherwise minded? Okay. Agreed. Okay, thank you very much for that. That takes us to the fact is we'll just go over it again, just to ensure that everybody is well aware. It's a construction about building retrospective at 31 Hawthorne Drive, Dunnipace, Denny, from Mr. Brian Meakin. It's pages 60 to 66 on your agenda, and Mr. Vivian will be presenting the report. Thank you, Mr. Vivian.
Thank you, Convener. This application seeks retrospective planning permission to construct a 7 metre long, 2.4 metre wide outbuilding with a maximum height of 2.5 metres. It is used for domestic purposes as a TV room bar, and as mentioned previously, it was constructed or substantially completed in July 2020. The site contains a 2-storey terrace dwelling house, a single-storey rear extension, the outbuilding subject to this application, and a timber decking area. The extension to the house is used for home working as a hairdresser's. The outbuilding requires planning permission because the amount of development within the rear curtilage of the property exceeds the site coverage allowance under Class 3A of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development, Scotland Order. I think it'd be helpful if we could have a look at the photos, Jim or Jim, for the site, if you're able to bring them up. This is a photo taken from the back of the property. The outbuilding subject to this application is in green, built on the boundary, and you can see that in the context of other sheds along the rear boundaries of those neighbouring properties. Next one, thanks.
Can I just, I was going to say, can I just, you highlight what colour that shed was, but understand now, Mr. Vivian, thank you.
So the next photo was taken from within the property. So that's the front elevation of the shed that you can see along there. Next one, thanks. That's looking the other way towards the rear extension on the property. That's the site location plan. It's a bit hard to pick up, but it shows the footprint of the house, the extension to the rear, and also the shed. And the context within the location. And the next one, please. That's the previous shed that was on the property that the larger shed has replaced in the same location, but extending further towards the rear fence line. That's a photo of the gable end of the shed, and you can see the proximity to the fence line. And again, looking from the back of the property, and there should be one more, I think. Yep, and that's looking at the shed from the neighbouring property to the side. Thank you. So the application was requires consideration by the committee because, as previously said, it was called in by Councillor McCabe, and the reason is to ask the committee to refuse the application on the grounds of excessive overdevelopment. There were no consultations carried out for this application. The Community Council has not made any representations, and in the course of the application there were 4 objections from an adjoining neighbour, and the concerns raised in those representations are outlined in paragraph 6.1 of the report. The relevant policies of the development plan are considered in section 7A of the report. In summary, the development is not considered to have a detrimental impact on the character or the environmental quality of the home or the surrounding area in terms of size, design and materials. It is relatively large for the size of the garden, but it is not considered to be over-dominant or oversized in the context of the area. It is clearly smaller in scale and subservient to the house, and it is considered complementary to the functioning of the garden ground. Furthermore, it is not considered to have a detrimental effect on the neighbouring properties in terms of visual impact, overshadowing or overlooking. The application is therefore recommended for approval, and it is not considered that there are any material planning considerations which would otherwise justify refusal of the application. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Vivian. Going to open it up for members. Councillor Redmond, then Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Redmond.
Well, thanks. Just looking at it, obviously we've got an objection from, well, it's 4 objections, but they're all for the same individual at number 29, which assumes the property next door. Obviously they've got quite a similar large building at the bottom of their garden, but I was wondering, would you, I don't know if you know, Brent, but are you aware of what their objection is to the development?
Yeah, 6.1 of the report. There's a number of bullet points. So that summarises their concerns. So some of the concerns aren't material planning considerations. They're civic matters, and that's the fact that the gutter of the shed overhangs the boundary, right. And also the fact that the shed is up against the fence line. The neighbour's concerned that he can't maintain his fence because of the location of the shed. But those 2 matters fall to civic matters rather than things that can be taken into account through determining this application. Other concerns are in relation to impact on sunlight within the neighbouring garden. No need for the building, given there's a significant extension on the property. and concerns that it's overdevelopment in terms of the amount of garden space that the shed takes up.
Thanks, Brent.
Councillor Nimmo? Did you have your light on, sir?
Convener, sorry, no, never.
Okay, thank you. Anybody, any other member like to come in? Bailey Kerr.
Just a quick one. I don't know who this is for, but why is it taking 4 years?
Yeah, I can answer that. The we received a complaint from the neighbour in October, November last year. So that's the first time that we were aware of the shed. So as a consequence of the complaint coming in, the homeowner was invited to make a retrospective planning application. So that came in April this year. So, you know, we've attempting to determine the application within, you know, the standard 2-month period from when the application came in.
Thanks, Brent. I'm just curious why it's took 3 years for a complaint to come in.
Okay.
I don't know if another point that that maybe highlight July 2020. There was many people, because that was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Many people have bought these sheds because going out wasn't an option for them. And I'm sure over the Falkirk district there are sheds up that hasn't got planning. But I'm sure that the neighbours get on with each other. So I don't know if it's a personal thing or no. As Councillor Redmond already noted, there's a large shed garage next door to the property. Just an observation. And thanks for your answer, Mr. Vivian. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Bailey Kerr. Anybody else like to come in at this stage? How do members feel in relation to this application? Councillor Sinclair.
Convener, I'm given everything that I've seen and heard. I think I'm content to move the officer's recommendations to grant planning permission. Yeah.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Second that, Convener.
Provost, seconded by the Provost. Okay, just to clarify, we have a motion moved and seconded to grant the application. Is there anybody otherwise minded? No? Okay then. Thank you.
Agreed.
That takes us to item 7 on your agenda today. It is a discharge of planning obligation attached to planning permissions which restricted for all time coming the use of occupation of the dwelling house now known as Rose Cottage, Westernmelling, Denny, and registered in the Land Register of Scotland as accommodation for persons or child cohabiting, therefore solely or mainly working or last working in the locality and agricultural at Rose Cottage, Westernmelling, Denny, for Mr. Kevin Merritt. It's pages 67 to 73, and once again, Brent will be doing the report. Thank you, Brent.
Thank you, Convener. This application relates to a site at a countryside location at Westernmelling to the west of Denny. The site is occupied by a single-storey dwelling house known as Rose Cottage. In terms of the background, the house was granted planning permission in 2011. The information submitted at that time advised that the applicant, Robert Mowat, farmed cattle and sheep at 3 locations comprising a total of 184 acres, with the main farm complex being at Westernmelling. That application was approved on the grounds of operational need to enable proper 24-hour care and supervision of the livestock. This current application seeks to remove the Section 75 planning obligation attached to the planning permission, which restricts an all-time coming to use and occupation of the house as accommodation for persons solely or mainly working or last working in the locality in agriculture, or a child or cohabitant residing with that person. The application requires consideration by the committee because the original application seeking planning permission in principle was determined by the committee. There were no consultations carried out for the application. The Community Council has not made any representations and no public representations have been received. The material planning considerations are the information submitted in support of the application and Circular 3/2012 planning obligations and good neighbour agreements. Circular 3/2012 advises that planning authorities should take into account any changes in circumstance, meaning that the Section 75 planning obligation is no longer reasonable and should be modified or discharged to reflect the change in circumstances as appropriate. The tests that have to be met in respect of a planning obligation are outlined in paragraph 7b.5 of the report. The following comments are made in respect of these considerations. First, the submissions by the applicant indicate a change of circumstances since the planning permission was granted, in that the main farmland has been sold off and there is no longer a connection or association between the farmhouse at Westmaling, the main farmland and Rose Cottage. As detailed in the report, the original applicant, Robert Mowat, the resident of Rose Cottage, has recently passed away, and the original farmer on whose land Robert Mowat farmed has also passed away. And at the time of the farmer passing away, the farm was split up and sold. Second, when the farm was split up, Robert Mowat purchased half a hectare, which is retained with Rose Cottage, but this is a small amount of land to support a viable agricultural business. And third, Rose Cottage has been sold subject to the occupancy restriction being removed. It is recognised that the occupancy restriction is a burden to the sale of the property and is considered an unnecessary burden. In conclusion, it is considered that the planning obligation no longer serves a planning purpose and is no longer reasonable, and it is therefore recommended that committee agree to discharge the planning obligation. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Brent. I'm going to state quite clearly that under the circumstances that I would agree to discharge the planning obligation as contained within the recommendation.
You're happy to second that?
Councillor Bowes?
Yep, me again, sorry. I don't disagree with you on the discharge of it. My only concern that I have is that you've now got that obviously fielded area there. Will that change that with regards to potential further development of the area? And now that, because that will now not be purely for a farm worker, which would have restricted any further development in that area, will this now open up to potential further development of the area?
Brent?
Well, any further development would need to come through the planning process if it wasn't permitted development. So if you're thinking particularly in terms of an application for an additional house, if for argument's sake it was being submitted to support an agricultural need, you would consider that on its merits, and as part of that consideration, you could consider the fact that there was an existing house which has been alienated from the holding and sold on. So, those matters would be for another day if there were development proposals coming forward, which would be subject to planning permission.
Thank you for that reply.
Daily Care?
Thanks, Convener. I think Brent's been very pragmatic in in his summary and his decision. And I fully support yourself and the Vice Convener's recommendations.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? We've got a motion moved and seconded to agree the recommendation contained within the report to discharge the planning obligation. Is there anybody otherwise minded? Councillor Kelly? No? You've already seconded, that's perfect. Okay then, are we agreed then?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Takes us to item 8 on your agenda, the Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled persons, various streets number 10. It's pages 74 to 81 and the report is by Craig Russell. Craig, could you start off initially by just telling us exactly why these applications, as one following, come to committee, and obviously just give us a small overview on the reason. Thank you.
Yes, will do, Convener. Thank you. This report concerns an application for a disabled person's parking space on Balmoral Place in Stenhousemuir. In terms of the Council's scheme of delegation, this decision requires to be made by committee as an unresolved objection has been received to the making of the order. In terms of the relevant legislation, the authority requires to consider all objections made and not withdrawn before making the order. An application was received by a qualifying person and a suitable location was identified for the space. The location is shown on page 78 of your report. One objection was received and responded to. The content of this correspondence is detailed on pages 80 and 81. The objection has not been removed, hence this report being placed before you. Happy to take any questions, Convener.
One more information from you, Craig. What are the options open then to the committee? Thank you.
Thanks, Convener. As I understand it, the options open to the committee are to agree the location of the space or refuse the location of the space, or if a decision can't be reached, I understand an independent, so the word escapes me, it's not reporter, but somebody can be called upon to review the application if the committee can't reach a decision.
Then we've heard Mr. Russell. I'm bringing members in. Daily Care.
With regards to on page 80, Convener, with regards to the objection, it states that where it's planned for parking, or where the bay is planned, it prevents or stops other cars parking to the side, to one side of it. Is that a fact, Craig?
Through you, Convener, once an application for a disabled bay is submitted, and it's submitted by a qualifying person, we're required under legislation to identify a suitable location for the space, and then that space is physically marked on site. So this space and the one in the report to follow, they have already been provided on site. The liner has already been out and marked the space. That's what we have to do in accordance with the legislation, despite the fact that the order hasn't yet been made. So in respect of the objection, we were able to undertake further site visits in response to that objection and observe that the parking continues to operate as it did beforehand. So on that basis, the objection was we were satisfied that the space hadn't affected parking in the area.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Daily Care.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Sinclair's got the Google map up on his laptop, and it gives you a visual view of the square. And I just thought if it could be moved either way to accommodate him. But I'm happy with Craig's summary of the situation. Convener, thanks.
Okay, any other member like to come in? Councillor Bowes?
Thank you, Convener. Craig, the moving the disabled bay 45 feet to the right, would that be any problem to the person who's getting the disabled bay?
Through you, Convener.
Yep.
When we identify suitable locations, we undertake a survey before the bay location is determined, and we try to locate the bay in the position that the applicant's car has been observed parking in. That's the case at Balmoral Place and Stennismuir. So we went out, we did some site visits, we observed where the applicant's car was, and that's where we proposed to mark the bay. If committee decides to refuse this order, we would abandon the order and we would promote a new order in a new location. Yep. I wouldn't be able to state at this time whether the new amended location would be an issue for the applicant or not. Clearly, it would be a matter of 4 or 5 feet, as mentioned by Councillor Bowes. I couldn't state whether that's a problem for the applicant or not.
Thanks, Craig. Back to you, Councillor Bowes.
Yeah, and to be honest, and you know how much I love site visits, but we have done it before, and sort of got to see it a wee bit better because I don't think we're entirely clear on this. I think that it'd be worth us going to see it just to make sure the full situation in the area.
Okay then. Are you advocating a site visit, Councillor Bowes?
Yeah, unaccompanied.
Right, hold on a second. What we'll do is we'll bring Mr Henderson in because there are different legislations for site visits in relation to this than there is for ordinary applications. Mr Henderson.
Thank you, Convener. And just as an initial point, I think my colleague, Mr Miller, has gone on to Street View and would be able to let members see that if that might be of assistance.
Yep.
At this stage.
Yep.
While he's doing that, it is competent for members to hold a site inspection, but it is purely a site inspection, as the report notes. If there were to be a hearing, it's a particular kind of hearing where there's a reporter who's nominated from a list held by the Scottish ministers to then convene a hearing on the council's behalf. So that's a particular process. So any site visit would simply be to see the physical characteristics. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, these photographs are very beneficial, really beneficial.
So, sorry, Convener.
Yeah.
Craig, can you just highlight where the proposed square is to be placed?
Again, through you, Convener, it's roughly the position of the silver. I think it's a Ford Focus on the right hand side of that image there. Roughly in that location, maybe a metre further into the corner or so. It's difficult to tell from here.
Okay, I'm coming back to you, Councillor Bowes, now that you've seen the photo.
So looking at the photograph, you can see the car into that side, and there's obviously and I'm assuming number 16 is closest to the bollards, and I'm assuming that's why he's put in his objection to it, and why he's saying that moving it slightly that way would allow still access into that corner, whereas if you move it slightly, whereas if you're going Silver Car side to the left, you lose that section in the corner for parking. I'm assuming that's why he's putting the objection in. That is, I haven't been specifically to see this. This is the first time I'm seeing this area, but it may, now seeing the picture, I now understand why he's put his objection in.
So are you still moving for a site visit?
I think it would be sensible.
Okay, you've heard from Councillor Bowes. I'll go along with Councillor Bowes. Is there anybody otherwise minded?
no otherwise minded, but just to remind Councillor Bowes about site visits, that I know he's no a favourite of them.
I think I did say that at the start.
Well, obviously that it's going to be.
But then again, sometimes when you go into site, you see things that you didn't expect, and you get a better understanding.
Oh, okay, just getting back to the issue here. There's been a motion moved and seconded to go to sites. And once again, Mr. Henderson, will you just reiterate what you stated in terms of site visits for these applications?
Yes, thank you, convener. The site visit is by necessity, by statute, purely to see the physical characteristics, to allow members to view that. The point I was making earlier is that the only option if members wanted a discussion by way of a hearing on the matter would be to appoint a reporter from the list held by the Scottish ministers, and that reporter then convenes a hearing session. So that being the case, it's very important that this kind of site visit is purely a view of the physical characteristics of the site. Thank you, convener.
Any indication from officers when a site visit could take place? As you know, we're running into the holiday period. Mr. Miller?
Thank you, convener. It would be after the summer recess, 12th of August, I believe it is scheduled in for.
Okay, and when would the next planning committee take place in August? That's the 12th of August for the sites, would be the 21st. Okay, right, is everybody agreed then to this? Councillor Redmond?
Just a quick question for Mr. Russell, because obviously we're saying it's an inspection and not a visit, so we won't be able to ask questions there. But when it was up in Google Maps here, there was already a disabled space there, and we've seen that it's not just the space, but there was actually sort of cross markings at the side of the vehicle. There was a space at the kind of north of the car park. It's already a disabled space, so it's not just a space. Would that involve cross lines? Or I don't know what the proper term is, but keep clear lines a metre each side of the vehicle. So really, I could understand how that could upset people, because it's all right, allocating a space, but if you're putting areas by the side of it, which is obviously needed for disabled access, would you be having that both sides of the space, a kind of cross lines? Could you maybe tell us about that?
Certainly, convener, again through you. No, the hatch marking that you saw in that other space there would not be provided on this space here. And you might ask me why, and I can't tell you. It may have been a change in legislation. It may be that the space that you saw previously is marked in an area that the council, as roads authority, isn't responsible for. I don't know at this time, councillor. However, the space that would be provided that we're considering today would be a simple bay. It would be 3.6 metres wide, 4.2 metres long, and it would just be a dashed white line that highlights the outline of the bay with the word disabled written at the face of the bay as you drive into it.
Thanks, that's really helpful. Cheers, Craig.
Sir, any other questions? Councillor Nimmo.
Convener, just on the back of the previous question there from Councillor Redmond, the chevrons marked area, Craig, could that be there because it's for wheelchair access? Is that maybe why that's there?
Through you, convener, I honestly can't tell you. Quite often you see the chevron marking in private parking areas and, Tesco supermarkets, that sort of thing. It's not required by the regulations that we mark bays with in the area that we're talking about in Stennismuir. So I can do some digging perhaps for the next committee when this one comes on after the site visit and try and give you the background to the chevron markings in the other space, but they're not being proposed as part of the current space.
Okay.
The entirety
Thanks,
of the
Craig.
state, sole beneficiary, Carolina.
Somebody's joined us. That's fine. Okay then. As members agreed then to site visit. Agreed. Thank you. That takes us to item 9, the Falkirk Council on-street parking space for disabled, various streets, Order 20, pages 82 to 90 on your agenda. And once again, we'll ask our professional officer, Craig Russell, to come back in on this one. Thank you, Craig.
Thanks, Convener. This report concerns an application for a disabled person's parking space on Dochart Place in Hall Glen. In terms of the Council's scheme of delegation, this decision requires to be made by committee as an unresolved objection has been received to the making of the order. In terms of the relevant legislation, the authority requires to consider all objections made and not withdrawn before making the order. An application was received by a qualifying person and a suitable location was identified for the space. This is shown on page 86 of your report. One objection was received and responded to. The content of this correspondence is detailed on pages 88 to 90. The objection has not been removed, hence this report being placed before you. Again, happy to take any questions, Convener.
Thank you again, Craig. Any questions coming from any member on this application? Well, the recommendation is members asked to consider the terms of the report, including the objection, and determine whether the order should be made. So I'm happy to move that we determine and that the order should be made. Anybody else otherwise minded?
Yeah, just to confirm that because you see the person talks about going for hip operations and things like that, so they may end up with a disability. So they actually may be able, because it's not that disabled parking space doesn't belong to an individual. So anybody who has got a blue badge can use that, can't they?
Yeah, we'll go back to Craig because that's a very interesting question that was put there by Councillor Bowes. Have you just give us the legality in relation to disabled parking for everybody?
Thanks, Convener. So yes, Councillor Bowes' understanding is correct. Although an application for a bay is kicked off by an applicant, once the bay is provided, it can be used by any blue badge holder.
Yeah. Thank you for clarification. Bailey Kerr.
I don't know if you've been second, but I'd formally second your proposal, Convener.
Okay, thank you.
I maybe should have said that the last one, I was quite happy to support the recommendations. The last one, I don't know if it's too late for to note that.
You're too late, sir.
Too late, right?
Okay, thank you. Okay then, motion moved and seconded. We've considered the terms of the report, including the objection, and we're determining whether the order should be made. It's been moved and seconded that it should be made. Is everybody agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Just like to thank all members, both here and online.
Thanks.
Thanks, Convener.
See you later.
And thanks to officers as well. Okay, thank you.